Hi, I'm Sara Price, and I'm presenting our collaborative work, The Making of Meaning Through Dyadic Haptic Affective Touch. Touch is important in human-human relationships. It's important for creating bonds between people, places, and things. It's important for communicating emotion. And it's important for well-being, for interpersonal relationships, for example, for enhancing positive mood, decreasing blood pressure, and heart rate. Advances in haptic technologies bring new opportunities for tactile communication, but embedding digital touch into the socially sensory context of established touch communication is complex, and it raises key design issues for effective mediated communication. Within this context, this research asks, how do people use synthetic haptic sensations for meaningful effective communication? And what are the implications of this use for haptic design? In so doing, the research moves beyond general touch communication ideas of connectedness or pleasantness to try and better understand the mapping between synthetic tactile actuation and emotional communication. Our paper reports empirical studies using a purpose-built Tactile Emoticon device. It allows two people to send and receive tactile messages over a distance using haptic sensations of vibration, pressure, and temperature, and can be orchestrated in terms of duration and intensity. Here's a video demonstrating its functionality.
I'm going to insert my hand into the device. And now I want to feel both on this device and send to the other device. So I'm going to select both. First, I want to feel temperature, and I want to feel cold. So I'm going to turn the dial in this direction. And I can already start to feel that cooling down. But now I want to add some pressure to both of them. As you can see, both are similar. So I'm stopping the pressure now, and it relaxes. And so the final thing I can experience is vibration, which I'm going to send to myself. That feels quite nice, and I think maybe I want it to be a medium temperature. And now that I'm happy with the vibration, I'm going to send it to the other device again.
So this system is used as a research tool to gain in-depth understanding of how people use these haptic sensations for meaningful, effective communication. Given the socially orientated perspective of this work, our studies contextualized interaction through particular relationships, situations, and emotionally framed communication scenarios. So pairs of participants were romantic partners, friends, work colleagues, or family. If each pair were provided with a fictional scenario. So for example, here, for social rejection context, they were asked to imagine their friend was at a social gathering where nobody talked to them and they were feeling rejected or excluded, and asked to send them a touch message of support. And one sent the message and the other received the message. So pairs of participants began with a free exploration stage where they learned how the system works and became familiar with the different tactile qualities. This was followed by an interaction phase where they were sent touch messages to each other based on scenarios that were given. So for example, in one of the studies, participants were positioned in different rooms. There was a researcher with each of the participants. So the sender would talk through what they were doing when they were creating the message, how they were using vibration, temperature, pressure, and intensity. And another researcher with the recipient and asked them what they were feeling and how they interpreted the message when it was sent. And then all pairs took part in an interaction interview afterwards. These were video recorded for analysis. So 3 key areas that speak to design emerged from the findings: the social dimensions of touch, modalities and effective meaning, and dynamics of tactile interaction. But since there's not time to cover all of these points, I'm just going to pull out the headlines or the most interesting ones that speak to implications for design. So in terms of social dimensions of touch, participants reported the importance of a sense of presence through the physical tactile qualities and the heat or sweat from the device. Tactile identity is a key headline finding here. Identity was really important, so knowing who the other person was and the sense of the physical presence being personal. And these characteristics were conveyed through physical characteristics like their hand size, or their knowledge of the tactile experience with the other, or their sensitivities to touch. And this identity was central to 2 levels of communication that emerged. So there's the sense of presence, sort of I am here. And on top of that, there's the specific emotional message. And is pointed to design implications for control. So not only in the ability to block incoming messages or specific modalities, but also control to shift between those two levels of communication, saying I'm here, and to a more personalized, complex tactile message. In terms of modalities and affective meaning, pressure and temperature were used in most messages. Pressure findings were similar to findings on physical touch, but temperature was interesting since it was noted for the feeling of warmth and presence that it conveyed, and this is a quality less explored in haptics. But most notable was vibration, and although vibration worked well for situations like conveying excitement, this modality was found to be unnatural and at times unpleasant. And this is interesting given the prevalent use of vibration in digital touch devices today. The third area relates to dynamics of tactile interaction, things like speed, change, duration, touch patterns, and our findings suggested the need for a much finer control of each of these dimensions. Where on the body and the distribution of touch was also important for the emotional content of the messages and for how it was interpreted. But a key takeaway here was the foregrounding of the bi-directionality of touch. So when you touch someone, you are also being touched. And understanding the reaction of the other person was critical for participants to understand their tactile message fulfilled its purpose, but also to continue the tactile communication. So, for example, if we're feeling a bit embarrassed, you could have a little tremble of the hand or a very slow retraction. Or if you wanted to show a pleasurable response to a romantic touch, it could result in a sense of the moving of the hand to get closer to the other. And this points to the need to consider modalities needed to capture such body reactions or responses and to feed them back. So overall, these findings suggest the importance of personalized practices. So tools needed to provide users with tools that allow them to customize and integrate their own shared meanings and understandings and to situate them in context. Nuanced messages, the need to provide tools to customize modalities and body location for touch, and the bidirectionality of touch, and the need for tools that enable that two-way interaction, the expression of tactile identity, and the bodily tactile feedback, the reciprocity of touch interaction. So this work contributes to a new problem space where the emphasis in digital touch communication shifts from generating recognizable touches to providing tools that allow people to determine their touches and establish a common understanding about their meaning. Thank you for listening.